It's true! You know, I really hope that if you got an ad, that first sentence was like really funny in the context of the ad. But back to Lost Judgment. It's true. As time marches on and the age of a new king draws nearer, more and more signs point towards the very unfortunate fact that Lost Judgment clearly was by no means intentional. But this mistake was the good kind of mistake, like me and you. Well, good for us. You see, Judgment back when it was the newest game was a lot of fun and often was the subject of a lot of debates that tried to determine whether this or something like Yakuza 0 had the best gameplay in the series. Many people, myself included, often wondered how they could have possibly improved from here, besides obvious things like maybe one or two more fighting styles. And then in comes Lost Judgment, which was made in about 2 or 3 years, and it completely shits all over every game that came before it. Now, of course, you will still see people saying that its combat isn't the best and that Yakuza 3's is better or something, but I'd get in trouble if I discriminated against the less abled, so I'm gonna move on. The reason I'm bringing this up is because of the Kiwami 3 demo that released however long ago now. It's been released to more than 1,000 overwhelmingly positive reviews, as you can clearly see, and I couldn't agree more with the general audience because my initial thoughts on the demo were... In all seriousness, whether Kiwami 3 was the best game ever made or the worst game ever made, you should 100% be angry at Sega for their numerous bad decisions in recent memory. And sadly, even if you could forgive them for their behaviour, which you shouldn't at all by the way, you can't even justify that stance by saying the game is good. Because instead of it just being Lost Judgment but better, it is just Lost. And that's it. For this video, I will just be mostly talking about the game though, looking at some of the dumb and weird decisions made in Kiwami 3 so far. In fairness to them, it is a demo and most likely the Tokyo Game Show build, so some of the things discussed in this video could indeed be bugs that get fixed or could be things that just simply aren't accessible yet in the demo. I also wanted to make this video short as I plan to discuss things in more critical detail after the game is actually out. So to start us off, I will discuss how the game looks, which apparently Sega can address the oversaturated elephant in the room, but not a sex offender, so clearly they listen, but hate their fans, they don't care. We all know Kiwami 1 and 2 were green, most notably at night. We also all know, but don't really mention, how Yakuza 3 at night was super blue. So, Dark Tides at night is super green, and Kiwami 3 is super blue. But also, they're both extremely blue during the day, like just comically blue. And the green and the blue both look pretty bad. However, this is all just in Kamurocho, because in Ryukyu, it's got this ridiculous saturation filter over the whole game, and it makes it look goddamn terrible. Like Pirate Yakuza. And like this river, for example, which not only is also ridiculously blue, but it's an incredibly oversaturated blue. But don't worry fellas, they heard your complaints and it was actually a bug that made it look this shit. Yeah, I'm sure it was a bug. Compare this to Gaiden, which is the best looking these games have ever been. Black, blue, and red were very prominently used throughout, and when it was contrasted with the super colourful castle, it just made the visuals of the game really stand out in such a brilliant way. Then go back further to Lost Judgment. It was an incredibly orange game, which automatically orange is a much better colour than blue, but the orangeness was largely in part to the game frequently setting things in the afternoon. At night there was still an orange filter, but a very subtle one that looks quite nice, and keeps it close to Judgment, which was also sort of orangish, but in combat is where it would truly shine. Chromatic aberration is a thing where basically a camera can't focus colours properly and it looks all weird, and a lot of games do it for some dumb reason, and it always looks like shit, unless your name's Lost Judgment, in which case they use this effect as a sort of impact effect in almost all of the heat actions, quick time events, and whatever else. I think Judgment actually introduced it, but it was extremely hard to notice and didn't really add anything, but in Lost Judgment it's much more noticeable without being obvious. It's always done for just a few frames on big, impactful moments, and you'll see 3 images side by side. A red, a green, and a blue one. With how quick it is and how tastefully done the strength of the effect is, all it does is add a nice splash of colour to everything, which when combined with the colour filters that come in representing whatever style you're in, it does a lot to emphasise the key moments of the heat action or quick time event or whatever. Considering the base styles are also coloured red, green, and blue, it feels very appropriate to have done this effect. It'll also do it if you're in boxing style, although not for all heat actions, but because of the orange it is harder to notice, which is actually good because it clearly shows it is naturally using proper colours rather than just trying to force some red, green, or blue in there. Whenever you swap styles, activate EX Boost, or kill an enemy in EX Boost, the chromatic effect will flash on screen, as well as having the filter of whatever style you're in, and as you get further away from the center of the screen, the effect strengthens, highlighting Yagami in the center of the screen. Lost Judgment also did a great job at massively improving the visual style of the heat aura effects, and combined with the particle effects from Yakuza 6, which I always felt were significantly increased in Lost Judgment, fuck, dude. These particle, aura, and chromatic aberration effects as they were done in this game would go on to be used in every game afterwards to varying degrees. And I mean, it's especially noticeable when you see Gaiden gameplay with its sexy lighting, like, oh man, this shit looks awesome. And all of these sexy as shit things were introduced in one single game, but sadly Pirate Yakuza saw them stupidly tone down a lot of these cool ass effects, and they made a lot of unique visual aspects between the styles of Lost Judgment and Gaiden, like the unique attack trails, basically the same regardless of what style you're in. And unfortunately, Kiwami 3 has not retracted that change. So the chromatic aberration is barely noticeable. In fact, it's so unnoticeable that when I was looking frame by frame at stuff, I only noticed it in dark tires with Mine, but it's so blue, green, and purple, I couldn't tell if there were any other colors. The vignette effect is still there when you swap styles or activate extreme heat, but there's no more effect or sick slow motion when you kill an enemy in extreme heat, which definitely blunts the shit out of the impact of everything. And what's more, Pirate Yakuza got rid of unique stance change animations, which has been a prominent thing since Yakuza 0, but at least in that game, him spinning is sort of fits him. Then you get Kiwami 3, where these two nearly 100% identical animations are literally the single worst things I've ever seen from these games. Like, genuinely, what the fuck? This is worse than what an unpaid fan does without professional tools and knowledge. Oh, but we want them to be quick. You see, in Gaiden, they were a bit slow. You literally already made quick but still cool looking transition animations in Lost Judgment. And with the heat auras and attack trails, Kiryu's two styles just end up looking the same. Like, it's just some standard looking blue and orange particle effects. At least Mine's Rage mode attacks, that's gay rage by the way, look kinda cool with the black smoke effects, but these just look boring. The effect that goes across your screen in extreme heat also looks dumb because it's just the same flame but blue or orange. Compare that to Lost Judgment, and when attacking with certain styles, or in particular when attacking an EX boost and doing whichever style's ultimate EX boost hit action, each of the styles have really unique effects that look amazing. In Tiger, there's a cool speedline effect during its finishing blow hit action, and with attacks, the effects will swirl and accentuate a certain point, which makes sense with traditional Tiger martial arts stuff having powerful, focused attacks, and there you're expected red with a bit of pink to highlight them. Crane has a smoky effect that I'm guessing is supposed to be like air, which is blue and has a bit of purple, and the effects flow so beautifully in the air, and it just looks so freaking cool during its finishing blow animation. Judgment did the same thing for both of these styles, but far out, dude. It's not even worth comparing it to Lost Judgment. Then you got Snake style, where its attack trails, when you look closely at them, are a bunch of wavy green lines which spin around and actually make the attack trails look like snakes, and combine that with the nice turquoise highlights, and it yet again just looks amazing. And then Boxing style, which didn't even need anything special because it was a DLC style. It doesn't have a unique heat action effect, but what it does have with its attack trails is a combination of a few things. The attack trails have solid straight lines to them as opposed to the very smoky multi-line attacks in the other styles, highlighting the straights, hooks, and jabs. They also will have a bunch of particle effects that surround specifically his hands to make them look like boxing gloves, or certain attacks will have an effect that make his punches look like bullets breaking the sound barrier. Like, you literally would never notice any of that, but without it, it would look nowhere near as good. But sadly, I'm not done with cool visual effects. They've always had unique style icons, but for some reason Gaiden was like, how about we do a red dragon and then just flip it and make it blue? Okay, but at least Pirate Yakuza made them unique again. So what will Kiwami 3 do? How about we just slightly change the inner symbol and then just put a spear there? You fucks. Alright, well, at the very least, Judgment introduced unique animated effects over the heat gauge for EX boost in each style. Lost Judgment did the same thing and they all look cool as hell. Look at these. Gaiden did it too. Pirate Yakuza? Well, they look basically identical, but they're still different. Kiwami 3? Ah, great, they literally didn't put them in the game, and instead opted for the stupid flame effect. Cool, dude. Awesome. So here we have Kiwami 3, which graphically has much cooler particle effects, significantly better looking models, and a lot of the other Dragon Engine niceties that have mostly been ruined by the horrible saturation and blueness, but at least they're still here. So it looks a lot better than Yakuza 3, but having the knowledge of how these games used to present themselves with their subtle but beautiful visual effects, and knowing that Kiwami 3 could have looked like fucking Gaiden, is enough of a downside to make this game feel like it's no better looking than the PS3 game that had a Roblox avatar as the protagonist. But now for the actual gameplay, which I'm not going to comment on too much because unlike the visual effects, some of these things again could potentially get fixed or it'll be an upgrade or whatever. although I would take that knowledge with a grain of salt because Pirate Yakuza's demo had nearly everything unlocked, and so it meant that if you played the demo, you pretty much experienced everything that game's combat had to offer. Now, the simplest way I can put Kiwami 3's combat is that there is a lot of superfluous bullshit. I understand that a lot of these things will potentially have very niche use cases or whatever, but there's a lot of just pointless things. Mine, I definitely think, could be a lot better. I mean, for one, they could have literally just given us his fighting style, or they could also do things like making the first 4 light attacks not have the same finisher. But Mine's fortunately got a fun fighting style for what is advertised as its own game, but is realistically just another Majima saga. Kiryu, however, is just lame. If you don't know, Kiryu's got 2 styles. The brand new one, or more accurately, the bland new one. See what I did there? Ryukyu style. And they have combined both his new and old dragon fighting styles into this weird hybrid thing. I mean, first of all, it's cool to see the old dragon style, but you could have either just given us the old dragon style or just used the Gaiden one because the Gaiden one was awesome. But anyway, the Ryukyu style uses a bunch of Okinawan martial arts weapons like tonfas and sais. And like Pirate Yakuza and half of Gaiden, both styles have an attack that's done by holding the attack buttons, which is part 1 of the superfluous bullshit I mentioned. People liked that idea for the agent style in Gaiden, but more so the novelty of it rather than the practicality. Like, I never actually used the drones besides for a laugh or Amon, because if I wanted to damage an enemy, I would just punch them. And in Pirate Yakuza, they made a bigger deal by pretending your Sea Dog charge attacks were cool and special weapons, and Mad Dog had 3 charge attacks too. I only liked Mad Dog's Thunder God Fist, that's a Tekken joke, but it was unnecessary to put in effort in making 6 hold a button attacks. Clearly, they think a suitable replacement for more than 2 fighting styles is just to make it so that both styles can do everything, which is completely stupid. And so they did it again with Kiwami 3, annoyingly. The B swing combo isn't a new thing, but it served a purpose of being a heavy attack combo that you couldn't do accidentally. But what point does putting in the agent combo with the heavy attack button have? I don't know. What point does outright throwing someone by holding grab serve besides just being cheap? I don't know. What point does having a bunch of attacks that just slow down the pace of the combat achieve? I don't know. Maybe I could learn if I played the full game, but for now, they are once again superfluous. These attacks are different to charged finishers though, which those have always been great. Besides Yakuza 6, where they were shit. But in Gaiden, when you do a charge finisher versus a non-charged one, you get some different launch properties. Attacks that would just stagger can now juggle, or they could break guards, or they could send an enemy flying. And it also introduced triple finishes for the style. With the Kiwami 3 Dragon style, they just feel like nothing. And also they don't have the triple finishes, they got rid of those. Going back to visuals, they even look like nothing because there's no cool or obvious sound or visual effects for charging the attacks, which they have always done. Dragon style also has 2 sets of evade strikes. The original dragon ones, although the forward and back ones have swapped, which I kind of like that change, but they also have the Yakuza 0 brawler ones. I don't know if I'm misremembering, but it seems like they have gotten rid of the dragon engine ones though, which is probably because of me spotlighting how broken the forward evade strike has always been, except you then go over to Mine and he's got something worse. But anyway, once again, maybe I could learn the truth one day, but for now, there genuinely is no reason for them to have 2 different sets. It is superfluous. 1 set is enough. Like in Pirate Yakuza, they had 2 sets, but that's because in Mad Dog, every light attack was unarmed and every heavy attack was with the knife, which was a sick way to make the style feel more in-depth without really doing anything. And I don't even need to compare these things to Lost Judgment, but that game had extremely cool looking charge finishes, and Snake also had 2 sets of evade strikes. The 2 light attack ones could be upgraded into 3 different heavy attack ones, and the heavy attacks were stronger and faster, but rather than getting rid of the original 2, you can just use both. Maybe that's the same case here, but I don't know. Because it seems like in Kiwami 3's case, it was just an excuse to make it look like the style has more to it when it doesn't. EX Boost also introduced a couple new attacks, but they were just heavy attacks which now became combos rather than just a single attack. They also made it so that your grab was different and would throw enemies, like the dragon style holding grab thing you can do. They would lock powerful options behind the powerful mode, meaning that you couldn't engage with those things at all times, which simultaneously made things both simple and complex. All extreme heat, or whatever stupid name they give it now, all that gives you is finishing holds, the ability to swap styles during attacks, and if you have it active for long enough, you just press R2 and you get a free heat action, and you don't have to do anything, which is, that's really lame and boring. But the finishing holds are so stupid because whenever you land certain finishes, because I don't think it's all of them, you become locked into an animation. I wouldn't be surprised if you're invulnerable or whatever, but you just get forced against your will to do something. If only there was a way where I could still hit enemies with finishes normally, and if I wanted to grab them to do a finishing hold, I would press a button. I don't know, like the grab button or something. Yeah, it's dumb. Why can't you just press grab to do a finishing hold like you've always been able to do? And now the last thing I'll talk about in regards to Kiwami 3's combat is that the Ryukyu style attacks have such an awkward delay to everything. Combo finishes, those finishing holds, the charge attack things, like everything you do will end with a quick little, oh, let me put my weapons away animation. And there's so many attacks and whatever where I feel like I'm just locked into something I shouldn't be locked into. It may be unintended, but it makes everything feel heavier than it should be, which makes the whole game feel more unresponsive. You can't cancel everything in Lost Judgment unless you're an EX boost, which is the same in Kiwami 3, but I never feel like I have to use it in Lost Judgment. It barely matters anyway, your attacks are quick and the enemies just barely do anything. But making it its own gauge as well, like Pirate Yakuza, means you're gonna rarely be able to activate the make the combat less clunky mode. And again, as time moves on, more and more things prove that Lost Judgment clearly was a mistake. Were that not the case, they would have been able to replicate its greatness, and as can be seen from the last 3 action games, they have not been able to do that. And Lost Judgment's not an accident, but instead a mistake, because this mistake has brought in the negative consequences of making all of their games look like shit in comparison. Anyway, I have a trillion thoughts on this game that I wanted to share. Like I seriously have typed over 9,000 words from just suddenly thinking something and writing it down. And a lot of this I will try to refine a bit more, and then I can detail to you why you shouldn't forgive Sega and RGG for their transgressions because they made a good game, because they didn't. They did make quite a fucking awesome game with Lost Judgment, but this isn't Lost Judgment. So yeah, I'll have more of those thoughts in later videos. And as soon as I can, I'm gonna stream a full playthrough of Dark Ties, but I highly encourage all of you to not waste your money with this game. Spend it on something else, like Sleeping Dogs. I bought that game for legitimately $4, and it's awesome. But I hope that any of you who are so desperate to play Kiwami 3 that you have to buy it, that my one single purchase is enough to convince even just 2 of you to not buy it. At the time of recording this, I'm super close to 60,000 subscribers, so come support me instead of Sega, and join the streams when they start. Or if you watch this in like a year, come watch my Fire Emblem streams or whatever I'm hopefully doing by then. Before I go though, Sega deserves an enormous kick up the ass for all of their recent stupidity, most of which you can check out here, or, well, anywhere on the internet. It's not just about morality, it's also about common sense. Moral and business sense have been thrown out the window by Sega, and to the people who insist that we must forgive the sex offender you didn't know existed until a couple months ago, and that we're all overreacting and are little babies and you're gonna play the game anyway, please understand that they couldn't give 2 shits about you either. Send them your receipts showing you bought the game, send them your love letters for the franchise, send them all the positive reception they could ever ask for, and they'll throw it all in the bin because they don't care. They threw away tens of thousands of positive reviews for Yakuza 0 in favor of a few hundred mixed reviews, so as if they could care a single bit what you have to say. Do all you can to get in their good books, but know that I, with nearly 60,000 subscribers, who's made hundreds of videos that clearly showed my love of the franchise, all of which amassed millions of views over the course of 5+ years, have never been put in their good books. Sorry to pull this card on you, but if they don't care about what I have to say, what in the fuck makes you think they care about you? If it wasn't obvious by now, Sega clearly don't care about anything besides their very apparent humiliation fetish. To be this good takes ages. Or if you're useless, all you need is 1 year.